Good morning, everyone. Super happy to have you here. See lots of new names. Great. Nice to have you here. We're going to look at some portraits, and we're going to look at them from a way of using light as an emotional tool. Many of us are familiar with regular portrait lighting or headshot lighting or traditional portraiture, and we're going to go through some images and look at other ways to do it and maybe some reasons why. My name is Don Giannetti. I run a online training course called Project 52 Pro System, where we spend a year getting you ready to be a commercial photographer, building portfolios, etc. And that is the sponsor. Yes, I'm sponsoring my own show. Isn't that cool? It's how you do it, folks. Anyway, we don't do it. We're not going to talk about it much anymore. So we're just going to move on and do this thing. It will be recorded, and the recording will be on the page of the links that you got here. On that page where the workshop titles are, there will be the video, the recorded video of this show. So welcome, everybody. I'll give it one more minute before we get going. Any questions before we start? Okay. And here we go. We're going to start with some very early pictures, just fly by them really quickly. All these pictures were taken before 1950. So what I think I'm actually saying here is really creative portraiture started a long time ago, and this stuff would hold well. This is Edward Steichen. J. Frederick Smith. I shouldn't say 1950, I should say 1960. These are the last shots of Marilyn Monroe by Bert Stern. This is just window light. Lighting as an emotional element. I'm a big believer in that. I think that our lighting is what creates the mood of the photograph and transcends just a photograph of a person. Nothing wrong with that. And many times that's all we're called to do, is just do a photograph of a person. Certainly nothing wrong with it. But if we want to add a little bit of emotion to it, sometimes it's composition, sometimes it's color, etc. But always it's lighting. The photographs from this particular set of images that we're going to be looking today are all from my students, all from the Project 52 students over the past couple of years. We do I do some portrait classes where we look at 6 or 8 famous photographers and then use what we've learned from looking at those photographers to create images in that style. So that's one way of finding our own style, is to dabble in others and then pull it back. My favorite quote is imitate, assimilate, and then innovate, by Clark Terry, a famous jazz musician. So we're going to start out with this shot that was inspired by William Coupon. One single light. In fact, the photographer left the light in. It's kind of a fun little compositional thing. And you can see this one simple light with a deep shadow to the side. You see how regal this picture is? It makes it very powerful. William Coupon is a great American photographer, and for about, I want to say 10 years, he shot with this background and that light. Big softbox to one side, meticulously placed. Notice the light wraps around the subject, comes out on the other side over here. That little bit of red coming through is so important. He would just take an armchair and throw a cloth over it, whatever, and have the subject sit there. But look how strong that is. Here's another deep shadow. In this case, the light is really a spotlight, or what I would call it's a grid spot, I believe, a grid spot coming down. So it's a special, letting the rest of her go black, especially making sure that that light, as you see, goes past her and lights up the canvas behind. So we have all this light and her torso going black here, and yet it's perfectly defined against that background. And it's combined with this pose, it's so much more dramatic. One of the things that we say a lot is we want a dramatic portrait. And usually when we say dramatic, we're generally talking about light and shadow. Most of the time when you talk to somebody about a dramatic portrait, and they show you an example, it's light and shadow. When we remove the shadow, it's not as dramatic anymore. There are exceptions, but those exceptions are usually caused by some other technique, like Platon's shooting faces with a wide angle lens or something like that. When we talk about drama, we're generally talking about light and shadow. This is Greg's shot. Beautiful soft light, but still great shadow here, and still keeping the background in the back, letting the face be revealed here. And this again is a one light photograph. The easy to make this less dramatic is to bring a fill card on this side and then just fill in the side of it, but let the drama happen here. Put below that little triangle of light right there, and a little bit of a glint in her eye. This is all Greg. He knew exactly what he wanted and how to do it. But it's a very strong portrait to me. It's not fierce, but it's between strong and fierce. It's very, very powerful portrait. Really like it. Another one light, in this particular case, letting it fall off very far in the back, very dark along this edge. And we can see the light gradient behind the subject is very soft. You see that? Very soft, from light to dark, very smooth transition. However, in our subject, it's really almost brutal. Light, dark, very little transition down the middle. And that gives the face more prominence, and it gives the subject more dimension. It's a very powerful subject against a very soft background. Oh, at any time, if you have a question, just pipe in with your question. Don't worry, just say, Don, I have a question. You don't have to raise your hand. I won't see that thing. I look at the pictures when I'm talking, so just pipe in if you ever have a question. Now, all questions are welcome. Another very simple one light, bringing the face to the front, letting the shadow be very dramatic here. This section's all about shadows, and the shadows get very dark over here, but they never go black. And that's key to this shot. And you can tell look at the difference between something that goes, there's really no detail here. This is so much more powerful or brutal on this gentleman than it is on her, even though she's going dark back here. The plate of her face, and that's what I call it. I call it the plate of the face. That is the forehead right here. To me, that's the plate of the face. This is the side of the face. The plate of the face is fully lit. And then as it goes away, it starts to get a little bit in the shadow here. We do have some detail in the shadow. We can see her chin. We can see her neck. We can see the hair in front of this very softly gradiated background. And you can Google gradiated. It sounds right. I don't know. Maybe I made it up. A little bit darker over here than it is here. It's very, very slightly, but she's turned into the dark side, and the dark side of hers against the little bit lighter side. That gives it dimension. That shadow gives it dimension. If you can imagine in the lighting diagram in your head, if you can imagine bringing a second light in and lighting this side of it up, it would not be the same portrait. It would not have the same power that this portrait has, even though it's still a fairly soft portrait. And then we jump to a very hard portrait. This is a hard light. This is a dramatic light. Combining it with the expression on the subject's face, the hands up in the air, creating this wonderful zigzag of light all around her, and then just that part of her face lit up, letting this go into the black. Sometimes I don't like that. Sometimes as 50 years as a commercial photographer, this scares me when this happens, because all I see is blobs of ink on a page. But as a print, this is beautiful going back into darkness. She's emerging from that darkness into a tiny pool of light. It's just right here. In fact, even that elbow is out of the light. No fill, just the edge, super dramatic. Those shadows in this particular shot, the shadow is the thing. The subject is, of course, the subject, but the shadow is the thing. If we lit her with a softbox in the same pose, not the same shot. Not a bad shot necessarily, I don't know, but not the same shot. A little bit of blur, just really soft. The subject's moving, and the photographer uses slow shutter speed. And notice how the shadow blends all the way around her, and then just a little bit of kicker on her hair back there to pull her forward. I love this. Ron Bell, I believe this is Ron's daughter. And look at her expression. Look where she's looking, and then look at that darkness that's creeping across her face. This was created to be an emotion, a mysterious photograph. What is she looking into? She's turning away from the light. We could sit here for an hour and do analogies of this picture. As a matter of fact, we could probably sit here and write headlines for book titles with this on the cover. All of us could. There's a story here. If she was looking towards the light, different story. Not better, but different story. If she's looking this way, it's a different story than having her look into the shadow. Isn't that really powerful? I love it. We did a session on Dan Winters, and Gray did a beautiful rendition of the type of portrait that Dan Winters did of Tom Hanks. You can look it up online, Dan Winters, Tom Hanks. And that's what he tried to achieve and did it beautifully, beautifully. You'll notice that the shadows are all kept within a particular range here. He's not let the shadows drop into darkness. And this is because he's using an ambient base. In other words, he's got a big softbox giving him f5.6, and he's shooting at 11. So the shadows can't drop into black because the ambient light is keeping that shadow density up, and he's shooting at the grid spot. That little patch of light on his face is so powerful. Such an interesting way to light, and an interesting portrait for sure. Very soft, wrapping around here. Even more soft. Anna shot, I believe, through a material to get this light. She's looking into the light. She's fading in the background. Her hair and everything's fading. And then there's this material, or it's been a while. I don't know if this is done in post or if she actually shot it. Knowing Anna, it could go either way. She's a brilliant photographer in Portugal. And I just have always loved this photograph, the simplicity of it, and yet the power of it. Now you're going to go and find portrait photographers, portrait people who will tell you, never have the subject close to the frame they're looking out of. In other words, she should be over here. Well, that's just not true. Look at this photograph. That's not true. The fact that she's close to the frame she's escaping from gives us a totally different emotion than if she were over here with the space she's looking into, the negative space. Both things are right. There's no right or wrong. But there are, rules. I have one major rule. I have two rules. Two rules about portraiture. One, there are no rules in portraiture. And two, see rule number one. There are no rules. Every time you look at an amazing photograph, one that really takes your breath away, ask yourself, did they follow the rules? Do you know how many composers were in Vienna writing music while Beethoven was breaking all the rules? We don't know because we don't remember those guys. They followed the rules. So rules, make it come from the heart. Here's your rule. Does it work for me? Does that picture pull someone in? That one certainly does. Here's another one from Anna. The gaze coming down and that wonderful shadow creeping right in on this side of her face, of the body. Except the shadows moving in. She's turning away from the light again. But in this case, the light isn't coming from the side. It's actually coming from the same side as the shadow. Do you see that? The light is coming this way, and so is the shadow. What she's doing is flagging off the light to present a little bit of shadow on this shoulder, letting the light pass the flag, light up the hands and the hair and everything through. Another really brilliant photograph by Anna Gunn. I really like this one. It's in the wrong section. We're going to get to the section. I really, really like this shot with the stripes of lines, the Venetian blinds, the lights coming through. My fault. It's in the wrong section. We're going to be looking at striped light in a moment. So anyway, but let's remember this one when we get there. Really, really beautiful shot. And notice how the photographer, Justin, kept the eye just halfway in the light. Now, I remember reviewing this with Justin, and this is what he was going for. He didn't want the light in the eye in the light, because he said when he did it, it was too much. And then when he brought her eye into the shadow, either eye into the total shadow here, it was too dark and it was a mess. So he kept this eye, the one that's actually closest to us, the one that we look at first, half in and half out. This one is going, about half in and half out. We got a little highlight, which is great on this one. The highlight saves this eye beautifully. But notice the shadows. It's mysterious. Where is she? What is happening that she's coming through the light like this? And we instantly form in our head some sort of story. And I think that's really, really powerful. This one, I believe, was in the style of Skrabnevsky. That was who we were looking at. And this is a very small but soft light source, like a small beauty dish or a small softbox. And it's brought in close, and you can see that it's falling off down here. Oops. Let's see if I do this right. There we go. It's falling off as it goes around here. And we know that it's not a hard light. It's not a speed light, a little bitty light source, because the transition here from the true value of her face to the shadow side of her face, this area is called transition, and it's soft. So it's a small diffused light brought in very close to control where it happens. And it gives this notice he's got her chin up. Her chin's up, very powerful. This shadow makes her powerful. It's almost like a very masculine light on a woman. And that gives her that power, that little shadow under her nose, right under her lip. It's really, really cool. Really cool. Easy to do with small diffuse light sources, 24 by 24 softbox, maybe with a grid on it, or a 20-inch a beauty dish with a sock and a grid, that type of thing. This is much harder light. And the hard light makes her stand out, and it's poppy. It's very much more, I guess, fashiony in a way. She really pops from the background, but the shadows keep it. I really, really don't like you sometimes, Zoom. The shadows keep it very interesting over here. She's all in shadow down here. And as her dark pants go into the darkness that's around her, the photographer has provided enough light that she doesn't disappear into it. So she's in the shadow, but she's not part of the shadow. And that makes her stand out quite well. The position right in the middle, and if you look at the way the light is, it's just this little globe of light right in the middle of the photograph, and everything else there is to support that. And again, very powerful way to light. Soft lighting, soft background, and movement. And movement, the movement moving through everything. And don't you love this real soft shadow in here? You can see, now do you see how the lighting, the soft lighting, complements the soft wardrobe? The piece she's wearing is very soft, it's very casual, it's falling off her shoulders. Her hair is very soft, it's moving around. The background is also soft. And then the photographer takes it one more step and adds that movement. I think that's just so pretty. And it's such a powerful way to create a portrait. So is this, by the way. This is grid spot on her face. Everything else is going dark. And then this background, I believe, was added in post, and then the screen was put over the front of it to kind of blur her away from being absolutely sharp. But notice the shadow of her face, this side, and her shoulders, right? But then notice the light coming back through the veil. The light comes back through the veil. The light hits the veil over here and surrounds her with light. Having her bring her head down, super powerful attitude in it, or what I call gesture. I do classes on gesture. Super powerful gesture. Totally different shot. If she looks up at us and smiles, totally different picture than this one, even if we left the screen and the background in place. Everything works together. The side lighting, the mysterious side lighting, the drama of the veil, all works together. Dancer at the window. This is the photographer's daughter. She put her in this window here. She's a dancer. She has a look at that triangle of light. The person goes through the triangle of light beautifully, but the triangle is what we see. And then she let all of these things go very dark, but not totally dark. She brought this up a little bit in post, so it's more of a black, or it's not a black and white, it's more of a dark gray and white. And that just makes this person stand out. When you take all the goofy red lines I made on it away, you have this really stunning portrait of someone looking out the short side of the frame. Again, breaking the rules, but in this case, what else would you do? We don't want her looking at us. And you could have turned her to do a silhouette, but that background is really dark for a silhouette. She's going to have a problem being read there. Photographer only wanted to use the window, and that's how it worked. This is a fun shot. That is the scrim put on the window there, and it just single light, and he's looking out towards that scrim, and the power of the light wrapping all around him, and that, again, the way the light and shadow plays on the plate of the face falling off quickly gives it huge drama. I don't think any of us look at it and go, that's a happy portrait. It's not a sad portrait. It's not a happy portrait. It's kind of a powerful portrait. And with his chin up and the light hitting his face like that, it's kind of a portrait with a little hope, a little emotion in it. It's very powerful. And again, I want to remind you, these are student works. These are really good photographs. Skrebneski would do motion, and this is a photograph in the Skrebneski style, and it's one light. And I'm sure you've all seen Skrebneski style. This one light coming in here, letting the eye sockets go dark, this blackness, catching the hair, super important. Can you imagine if that hair wasn't there? No way would this be as powerful. That little bit of light catching that hair makes it work. And the photographer made sure that their dark background wasn't so dark that this black jacket would fit in, would blend in. There's that little bit of separation, and that separation is super important. But I love this shot. I love the texture in the scarf here. And then there's that movement, that little bit of camera movement or subject movement. Angle is important, but what makes it really dramatic? Now imagine him sitting here in this chair the same way with a white background and side lit and front lit with a softbox, just lit. Might be a cool picture, but it wouldn't have this drama. The chair, the hand position, the face, and that top lighting coming down. This is a picture of a challenge. There's something happening here. He's either being interrogated, or he's holding forth a lecture. Something, it's not just a picture of him. And that top lighting coming down, lighting his chest, which is powerful, lighting his hands, the tops of his knees, and then the top of his head, letting the shadows fall down. Number one, it's not what we're used to. And number two, it pulls him off that very nondescript and very non-contextual background. There's no context to where this is. And that makes it really powerful. Soft, soft light. A little bit theatrical. Our light's a little bit brighter over here, moves around, and it catches our young dancer here, but doesn't let her fall into the darkness. She's right here in the light. This shadow down her body, on her head here, down the back of her, and down the dress here, against that little bit of light back here, where the photographer is very, very controlling with the light. Don't let her, go into the darkness. If she goes into the darkness, she blends into the darkness. It's a totally different mood. It's totally different. It becomes almost sinister. It's one way that you can create mystery, a little bit of sinister dramas. Let your subject fade into the background. We don't want her to fade into the background. So beautifully done. And notice how soft the light is. You see the transitions? Very soft, soft transitions. And again, this is a smaller light source brought in very close. Small, soft light source brought in very close, very controlled. Here the light is the subject. We have all this lighting in the picture, and we've isolated our dancer down here at the end. So the light coming in, now the photographer is low with a wide angle lens, so we have all this drama in the ceiling. Very cool. The photographers put our subject in the middle, so she's not being pulled by the wide angle lens. She's pretty much right where she needs to be. And then she's looking out and through the windows. Super soft light, because that is a big, big light source. And you can see the transitions are super soft here. But this is all about the light. We can feel the light in this picture. If we were there, we would feel the light, the warmth of it. We go from a very big light source to a very tiny little grid spot right on the eye, keeping the background bright. But also notice that Sally didn't let anything go into the darkness. It's all there. There's a control of the ambient. In other words, not letting the shadows go so far dark that you have to start, sliding those Lightroom sliders, 1.5 inches. Keep your subject there. This was done with very little post-processing, because by using the softbox to keep the ambient at 2.5 stops under the exposure light, it comes out, and you just have to do a little tweaking in post-processing, which we all have to do tweaking in post-processing. Digital files are, by their nature, not attractive to me. They're flat and boring. We all have to fix them a little bit, but you don't have to bring it all back. Isn't that powerful? What a dramatic way to show a subject. Cropping, this is another one of Greg's. He put her in where the sun light was, just on a little piece of wall there, put her face in the wall, and then crop the shot just to show the arms. It's a stunning photograph. I love it. And this little bit of shadow coming across here, it's so soft because it's a building or something quite far away. So it's sunlight. The distance that the shadow has had to travel softens the edges. So it's really, really soft. And look at that very stoic chin here, and the earrings. She's dressed. We see the pendant coming down here, and then this shadow. I think it's stunning. This is great. She's in the light. Got this triangle of light here. She's in the light there, and then we get the profile over here. And this shadow is so much a part of the photograph. Her profile is so much a part of the photograph that without it, it's not the same picture. There's a feeling of relaxation. There's also a feeling of drama here to me to have this dark shadow profile coming back off of it. It's also visually kind of fun. But I do love this streak of light coming down, catching her hair, letting her shoulders going in here, and then using her shadow as a compositional tool. Here, the feeling is theatrical because the photographers get some hard lights back here, got a grid spot coming down on the young lady's face here. So the plate of the face is lit and the rest of it goes into darkness. Her shoulders are lit. All of this is lit. And then she just stands out from the rest of it, just pulled out because it's in shadow. It isolates the face and the shoulders. And don't you love this little highlight there? I love that. I just love it. Beautiful photograph. Light streaks. This is where the other one belonged. Little streaks of light are interesting and they're also dramatic. What you do with the shadows, how dark you make the shadows, how light you make the shadows can change the entire photograph. For instance, this photograph by Angeli, had we taken this, we could take it into silver effects, for instance, and make it very dark, the shadows very dark and the light very bright. Wouldn't be this shot. The pose would remain the same, the subject would remain the same, but it wouldn't be this shot, this soft, sort of romantic little bit of light coming across. We could turn this same shot into dramatic and sinister just by the light. Light streaks are some of my most fun stuff. I love it. I love it, love it. How am I doing on time? Yeah, we're good. Fence light coming through. And again, the photographer keeping the, this is a big old picket fence or something over here. Photographer keeping the subject part in the shadow, but definitely keeping the eyes in the shadow here. So we don't have to deal with, eyelash shadows and dark shadows underneath the eyebrows, the eyelids here. Very carefully constructed where those shadows are. And you can see the same thing in the one above. The light's coming right in, so we're not dealing, and she's looking right into the light. You can see the little highlight that the strip is coming from the left of camera, not coming from the right. It's coming from the left. You see it right there? So very, very cool. This one, we let it go a little bit darker here. Photographers decided to let the shadows overwhelm this area. They're very dark. They're not pure black. We still see the earrings and the ears, and we still see the shoulder, and we see a little bit of something she's leaning on, but we get this great grid effect across her face, and it's really, really powerful. And again, the pose helps this, right? The bringing the eyes down, bringing the whole focus down and not up into the light, changes it from, hope into I'm looking into the light, to a little bit of sadness, and the light's coming down past us. So I think it's really dramatic. Now, when I say that, by the way, when I say that, that's what I see. You guys may see something different, something totally different, but that's how I see it. And that's what makes photography fun. That's the narrative. Using the shadows coming through a tree and his subject just being lit a little bit about him. Now, again, I don't know what the story is here. I don't know if any of us know the story, but I know that there's a story here. I could take this photograph and write four paragraphs about this photograph. And I wouldn't be writing about the exposure and the shadow detail and stuff like that. I'd be writing about the picture, what this guy was thinking or what was happening here to create that. This is just, I always look for grids. I look for fences. I look for light coming through and making stripes. I love Venetian blinds and things because I really, really love it. Now, in this particular one, he let the shadows go very dark. The stripes are very dark. And notice what a different look that creates than this one. It's a totally different feel with the very dark shadows. Now we get into one of my favorite lighting, backlight. Backlight. This picture of a bicyclist would look totally different if I was on the other side of the park photographing this way. It wouldn't have the mystery. It wouldn't have the anonymity. It wouldn't have that striking graphic moment that that bicycle rode right between the tree and the other tree. Later today, I'm doing the 10 photographers that are 10 photographs that are inspiring. We're talking about Cartier-Bresson, and this is very much a Cartier-Bresson shot. The photographer stood here waiting for people to come by on their bicycle to get the shot, because they visualized that light and that bicycle there, and they made it happen. The light is slightly to the back and side, throwing the shadows very deep off the nose here and putting a lot of light on the background. Now there's a thing called side lighting. This one is somewhat side lit, but it is a little bit back. So you can see it falling off the nose here rather than falling off the nose here. Now this is definitely a back side light. And look at what Anna did. She let it just fall off into the background, because the whole point of this photograph is that. That's the whole point of it, that light. The plate of the face is not the point. It is a study and profile of light on this young lady here. Shoulders, hair right up here, and to hell with what happens back here. The drama would be different if we put a fill card in. It may still be a really good shot. Certainly could be. Probably would be, but it wouldn't be this shot. And that dramatic backlight shadow is amazing. Now this is side light, but what I'm talking about when I say backlight is look at the light coming from the back here. This is the brightest part of the photograph. Do you see that? Oh boy. This is the brightest part of the photograph. It's brighter than this. That's our light back over here. This is a fill light that's coming in and giving us what looks like a main light, but this is really backlight. If our backlight's brighter than our front light, we kind of have backlight. That's what we have here. And the photographer using that material, placing the face over on this side, letting the light come wrapping around through here, through all this material here, just fabulous. Back side lighting. It's coming from back here. And so it wraps right on the side of the face here and lets the eyes and the mouth and the nose go so dark. And this side, this big shadow coming forward, it's side light pushed back to create more of a rim here. And look at this photographer has done this totally dramatic photograph. That because of she's shouting into the darkness. And she's being lit by this little bit of light over here. Again, we could write books and put this on the cover. We could write a bunch of things. In reality, they were laughing their butts off. She was screaming, and they got the shot. But that's the magic of still photography. The light's back behind her, lighting her up here, and there's just a little bit of fill to the front, and we get to see her face up front here. It's all about that light. Here's another back side. The light is if we look at the subject here, I'm sorry, zoom, no matter how many times you hit the notate button, it doesn't activate. I must go too fast. So if our subject is here, our light is here, letting it fall off as it gets to the face here, but lighting the background up back here, background, lighting it up. This is a softbox to this side, but notice that it's dropping off here, letting this part of his face right in here goes dark right here, just a little bit. We call that on the feather sometimes. I don't remember if this was actually on the feather, but it was close. And the feather of a light, by the way, the feather of a light is if you have a softbox here, and you have the light coming out of the softbox. This is the light for the softbox, but if you're working here, in this arc right here, that's the feather of this light. Really a fun place to work, by the way. just a rim, a face, a hat, and a shirt. Now, imagine this lit with softbox on camera. Would it even be the same guy, I wonder? Because this guy is this little, like just this little rim, the beard and the whole bit coming, so powerful, so emotional. Put a big softbox on camera, and it's a good portrait of this guy. And even if you just kept the rim light there, but we lit him up over here and let the rim light just be a little bit more powerful and sort of traditional portrait way, that would be cool. This is cooler. This is so powerful. And letting him go into the shadow again. He's emerging from the shadow. That gives that little bit of mystery. Backlit, all the lights coming from up here. Unusual lighting. She is standing in, if I remember this correctly, she's standing in water and reflecting she's standing in the light of a skylight, and the skylight is reflecting in the water. Now, how cool is that? It's just awesome. Photographer has the lights coming from above, so the photographer obviously has her turn the plate of the face up into the light, lights her face beautifully. The rest of her, that light is falling down. Shoulders are hiding the light. All this is hair's hiding the light back there. And then it picks up this little dress here, and that's a reflection of, I believe that's a reflection of the window over here, and that is a reflection of the skylight up there. So, or slightly behind her, coming, putting her right between these two reflections. But I believe, if I remember right, the floor is wet. She's standing on a wet, mopped floor. Super soft, double scrimmed kind of thing. In my mind, it's double scrim. Big scrim with a soft box behind the scrim, because look at the transitions. Look at that transition. That transition's 3 inches wide. That's super soft. That's a super large light source. Unfilled. The light source is so big that it's actually providing the light for the hair. It's actually coming around here. It's wrapping around here. Look at this beautiful soft hair. It's so soft and it's so beautiful and such perfect exposure. It's funny, real soft light like this is a little trickier than hard light, because hard light is so definitive. But when you get it in this soft, wow, it can be really, really tricky to use. And I love the way the photographer has her turned slightly away from the light. This light, this is in a, on the side of a building. This is just the building light up above. And the photographer went out, Chris went out with the model, and she's just standing under what would be essentially a street light, a light sconce in a building outside, looking right straight up into it, knowing that if she's looking at us, we're not going to see her face at all. He turns her face right up into the light. And again, that's an emotional pose, looking at the light. But at the same time, this very mysterious light coming down, she's looking at it. Chris has this beautifully, perfectly horizontal bar to cut this picture into 2 slices, top, bottom, and then she provides that column right up through it. So it's very much a grid, very much like a Mondrian approach. Super soft all the way through. Now, in this particular case, the photographer's got this, you can see it in the satin. You can see how big the light source is in the satin and how incredibly soft the fall off is, the transitions here. Super soft, a little bit of whiteboard over here, but then they added a light to the background to not let that background go so dark back there. That special is really important. Grid spots are always fun. They highlight. In this particular case, the grid is slightly off camera to the right, slightly off, causing a very small shadow here. But this grid spot lighting just the face and the hands course, wardrobe plays a great part in it. She had him put on the black jacket, and that little halo around him, little spray light around him, pulls his face off the background, but keeping the shadows on this side of his face and this side of his hand gives that little bit of directionality that gives the image depth. Without the shadow over here, without the shadow, it would be more flat lit. That little shadow, little bit of shadow makes all the difference in the world. Going dark. Let it go dark. Let the palette go dark. Let the shadows go really, really dark. Keep the highlights down. In this particular case, one of the things that makes this photograph interesting is that it's a dark photograph. And the photographer who made it definitely understands exposure. She can make it any way she wants. She chose to let it go dark. Let this mysterious hair blend into the face here. Let the smoke stand out because it's a little bit bright. Let the shoulders roll off with the shadows there that we see. Really, really, really cool. Really well thought out photograph. Another plate of the face looking right into the light. You see the light starting to fall off down here. Letting the shadows go dark, but not too dark. We still got his ear here. We still pick up his collar, his jacket against that gray chair that he's sitting in. And of all the things, when you look at this picture, one of the things that helps this picture tremendously is that little piece of gray chair there. If you can visualize taking that out, it would be a different photograph. That chair gives him that push forward in the picture, and it's because the lighting is catching it. Another Ronvel. In this particular case, the light is coming right from the camera, right straight into her face. It's a small, hard light. I believe it's a grid spot on a speed light. So it's very hard, coming right from the camera, very much like you would do a ring light. It's coming as close to the lens as he could get it. And that gives that little tiny shadow here, little one under here, but it lights up under the eyebrows. It keeps the light under the shadow from forming under the nose. Had he moved the speed light up 3 inches, there'd be a little light under the little shadow under the nose, and this would drop farther down into this. By keeping it right on the camera and keeping the plate of the face right at that speed light, creates what looks like a soft light, but as we examine it closely, as it falls off into the shadows here, it's not a soft light at all. It's kind of a very dramatic light. Super soft, add a little color, and keep the shadows from going pure black. The shadow in her face, the shadow of the hair, darkness in here, all through here, and the motion of the hair blowing by her face makes this a great, great portrait. Such a cool portrait. Also controlling the shadows of the background. Notice we have her head against the background. We've got this sort of dark gray here, but she's coming right into it. And yet all of this is great. It's perfectly exposed. We've got a little bit of detail there, a little bit of detail there. So we've got a nice plate of the face lit, but the hair itself is creating the shadows. Let the shadow fall down the side, keep the light behind the subject, and look how regal he looks by doing this. He looks very regal. He's got his lean, the pose helps as well, but just to bring him up, bring his head up, the jacket, and let the light fall behind him, single light fall behind him, makes it really powerful. A higher light coming down. This is very Skrebneski again. Skrebneski would use a highlight dropping down, and that would put long shadows under the noses, under the chin, under the lip here. It would darken these things. In other words, all the things that we're not supposed to do. Notice how I did this like this. This is like Saturday Night Live. They do that, I think. Anyway, we're not supposed to do those things. And yet, yeah, we are, because that makes a killer photograph. This is dramatic. This is not a happy photograph. These shadows falling off down here create a different emotion probably a little bit different in all of you looking at it, are going to have a little bit different feeling, but it's not just a portrait. That's what we're talking about in this particular endeavor here, is making something that's not just a portrait. Nothing wrong with just a portrait, but we can go so much deeper. We're going to go over, by the way, so if that's a problem, I'm sorry. We will go over, but I will take some questions here. I think I've only got too many to go here. We'll go through them a little faster. Light on both sides, light everywhere, but what's missing? Catch light. The catch light. Catch light changes a portrait. I used to keep little catch lights, a little Photoshop thing of catch lights that I'd isolated. And if I didn't get a catch light and I wanted it, I just move it over and add it. This one, photographer didn't want the catch light because it changes the mood of the photograph. Get ready for this one. Wow. Just wow. The use of a tiny, tiny light source and flags around the face. A little bit of Photoshop involved there, but mostly this is what it looked like coming out. The light source is tiny. It's behind the camera. It's just above the camera, and it's coming straight down onto the face. Bright light in the back, heavy side light, really powerful. Love this one too. Side light from the other side, softer background, but very much a similar portrait. Very much a similar portrait, just a little bit, one's more soft than the other. Here's another tightly cropped photo that I absolutely love. Just really beautiful. The soft shadow on the side and the cropping, it's astounding. Grid spot coming from up here, moving the plate of the face up into the spot. Notice the light coming down. Really fun. Coming through, the light's coming through something, adding a little bit of drama to it, and some light from the back. Nick's photograph of the miner. I've always loved this. This is one of Nick Geron's shots, and I just really am crazy about this shot. I think he did a really great job. Not a miner, I'm sorry, he's a truck mechanic, and he shot this. I see a question from someone. Go ahead and just jump in. What's your question, Philip? Philip Pan, got your hand up? Okay. Shooting through a window, getting the reflection. Isn't that, we call this contextual. Shooting through the window, getting the reflection in the portrait. How cool is that? And notice the lighting. The lighting is really being provided from what's behind the photographer, which is reflecting into the window, but softened by the time it gets through to her. Surrounding her with white, shooting it very bright. The context is bright, and all we're looking at when we look at this shot, the thing that catches our eyes instantly are the eyes, because it's the darkest thing in the page. Anytime you have a dark object next to the brightest object in the page, that's what we're going to look at. There's a famous painting of a black thumbprint in the middle of a huge white canvas. And you think, well, nobody'd see it. Yeah, everybody sees it because it's black against the huge white canvas. It stands out. Our eyes, just like our autofocus in the camera, look for contrast. A little bit of color, very soft, coming down, but we can add color to our light. In this particular case, it is color graded beautifully for that light style. The background here, the soft background, again, brings into the softness of the portrait and the softness of the young lady's wardrobe. Same here, little bit of light. Now, when we look at this, we think, oh, grid spot. Nope. See the light, the hand? This is just a very large softbox right over here. And a smaller softbox right there. but not down here. Beautiful, nearly traditional. Another Dan Winters attempt, a style, beautifully done. There's all kinds of, I don't know if it's coming through in Zoom, but there's all the texture we need in this jacket. We've got that light right on the face, and yet the ears and the hair never go away. And if you look very, very closely, right there on the ear right there, and right there, you see a highlight on the ear. If there's a highlight on something, there's a light source being reflected there, which in this case is the big softbox over here, turned way down to keep the ambient up. Look for reflections. Beautiful plate face of the face shot. I love this. This is a great pose. Look at her pose. She's looking right up into the light. And it's all about the arms and the shoulders and the face. It's just really, really cool. Ivan took this young, I think it's his grandson, out and had him do this dramatic pose with the tree. Little kids are so good at being dramatic. They're just great. Old adults, we can't do it, but little kids, like, they'll throw their hands up and whatever. Photographed it, even though it's backlight. Ivan used a small beauty dish up high to drop the light down on the tree and catch the backlight here, but that child is right there, part of it. The pose, the lighting, everything is so dramatic. Really soft light. I think this is Greg's again. Really soft light coming from up here, all about the arms surrounding the face. Hard light. This gentleman is a musician, and so the photographer lit them very much like a stage lighting would be done. That light coming down from the top all the way, getting the nose, letting it go, making all the mistakes that we would do in a traditional portrait. If this was turned in traditionally, this was a portrait, traditional portrait, I go, yeah, we didn't get any light on the eyes, we lost the chin. If you turn it into one of those print reviews where the guys smoke the pipes and they have the little patches on their corduroy jackets, and they'd be like going, no, I think the light on the ear is a little much. But it's a stunning portrait of this gentleman. It's outside, soft overhead light, get a nice feeling of that. We know this look. We know it. Photographer just let it happen. One light, backside, warm background. And now we have our first beauty light. This is, I used to shoot like this all the time. This was my go-to beauty lighting. If you look in the eyes, there are 4 umbrellas. I used 4 12-inch umbrellas all around the lens. So I was shooting between those 4 umbrellas. It took forever to set it up because every light was on a boom. So if you can imagine, we had 4 booms with tiny little umbrellas behind the camera. But oh, the lighting it would give you. Try it, folks. Sure is better than that ring light stuff. I don't like that at all. Soft light, overcast, very contextual. That softness on her, the softness all the way through here. Her super powerful, again, stage lighting. I want to have time for questions. And light coming from the back with beautiful fill here and a little bit of something going on that makes us believe it's outside. So, all right. Kind of went through those pictures, a lot of pictures to look at, but I hope they were inspirational for you, and I will turn it over for questions, Q&A. Any questions, comments, something from anybody? Just jump in. I'm that good. Okay.
I just wanted to say thank you, because just watching you go through in your discussion of each of the photos has given me a lot to think about. I've been photographing for a while, but not at this level, and it's exciting. And I actually paint, so it actually gave me some
cool.
ideas.
Very cool. That's great.
So Yeah,
That's
so
great.
this is really, really, I could sit here and listen to this all day.
Well, that's good. It is fascinating what we can do uh, with light, and then of course there's composition and there's posing and all of those things go into it. But you can overcome some things by just having great light. I
Yeah,
would say that a well-composed photograph, badly lit, is probably not going to be as powerful as a badly composed photograph or mediocre, let's say a mediocrely posed photograph that's beautifully lit.
yeah,
That's going to stand out over the other one.
yeah.
Thank you for
Yeah,
coming along.
yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm excited.
Good. This video, again, for everyone, this video will be on the same page where you found the Zoom link. We will get them up by the end of the day. So if you want to come back and see it, that you can. Who else?
Yeah.
Don,
Yes.
I'm a bit of an introvert, and I've always been told that people that don't relate to people can never make a portrait photographer. What's your feelings on that?
I am probably as introverted as they get. I am not a party guy. Believe me, if we're ever at a cocktail party and I actually show up, you don't want to hang with me because I got nothing to say. I want to go over in the corner and just like play on my phone. Okay.
That's me.
But I find that when I'm in a portrait situation, a different personality takes over because I know I have to engage this person. And I guess it's the knowing that I have to do it that brings out a more extroverted. So I'm extroverted when I'm teaching, I'm extroverted when I'm speaking, and I'm extroverted when I'm photographing. But I'm not extroverted in my life or in the, my favorite thing is to get on my motorcycle by myself and go far out into the Western world by myself and not talk to people. It's like, oh God, I got to go and talk to the guy at the gas station. Ah, rats, but I think it just happens, Bob. You just have to, you kind of push through it. That being said, Richard Avedon was very introverted. Even when he was working with his people, he was very, soft-spoken, helpful, whatever. He wasn't the David Bailey running around, jumping around, wearing crazy hats and, that stuff. Richard Avedon was very, very quiet. So was Irving Penn. Yeah, you can be a very good portrait, but you're going to take a different kind of portrait. It's going to be a more thoughtful, more engaging portrait than somebody who's very extroverted looking to get the subject to laugh or jump or do something like that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Who else has a question? I know some of you guys are sitting there, oh, my question's stupid. It's not stupid. It's a good question. Ask away. What kind of camera is best for portraits? The kind that record portraits. I don't have a clue what kind of camera is best. I don't know if there is such a thing. I will tell you this. I recently bought Topaz Adjust Resize. I'm not a spokesman for Topaz. I get no money from Topaz. I will just tell you this, that some of those photographs that you have that you took back in those 8 megapixel days back in 2007, 2008, and you want to bring them back, go get them, bring them back. Topaz will take that thing and turn it into a 40 megapixel image that will look as good as anything you took off your 40 megapixel camera. It's unbelievable. As a matter of fact, it may look even a little better. I found that what I'm doing is running my pictures through Topaz without enlarging them. Topaz fixes the sharpness and fixes the noise and the potential banding or whatever you call it, and gives me back the image, even though I didn't process it. I just put it in, it did its little AI magic, and then I pull it out. It looks better than when I sent it in. And so it's like part of my workflow now. I'm not up-resing everything, but I took some pictures back, I think, I want to say 2002 on a 10D, very first Canon consumer thing. They're 6.8 megapixels. Well, I pulled them into this and I resed them up to 24 megapixels. And I got to tell you, they looked like they were shot on a 6D at viewing distance. If you get in pixel peeping, you'll see some artifacting, etc. But at viewing distance, just amazing. Technology can be helpful. Well, all right. Well, if there's no questions, look for this up there. If you're interested in Project 52, there'll be links there on the page to Project 52. We are going to start enrolling January 1st. It is a full year of courses, live reviews. So you do an assignment, just like a real commercial photographer would do an assignment. Like one of the assignments is to do an ad shoot for a florist. Another one is to do editorial shoot for a magazine. We have real world assignments. We don't do like leading lines or one color, that stuff. We do real world assignments, and we're adding a lot more motion and design to this next year, because photographers, if you're planning on doing anything commercially, you've got to do motion. That means video clips, stop motion, and cinegraphs. It does not mean video. I'm not talking about making videos. That's a different thing. I'm just talking about video clips without sound. That's the best way to think of it. Video clips without sound. So just the stills, B-roll. And everybody have a great one. I hope you had a great Thanksgiving yesterday. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for coming out.